So hi there, welcome to lesson 5, module 5, and we have been looking at checking for completeness. Now, if you had looked and studied if you had studied the last lesson where we talked about three very powerful Stata commands, collapse, contract, and tabulate, used to measure for completeness, you would realize that two of them distort the data set. So every time we have to start using the data from the beginning, and that could cause a lot of problems. um, so there should be a way to be able to reference data without having to do that. So without wasting so much time, we talk about let's talk about two commands, and these commands are very special. These are one of the sets of commands in data that you cannot use one without the other. So if you use preserve, you must use restore. If you use restore, you must use preserve. So that's how they work. They work together. They cannot work in isolation, otherwise you would have errors. So the best way to describe this preserve and restore is to look at some of the one favorite artist of all time, who was Michael Jackson. Now I know this was not his the after picture does not look like what he was when he was old, but that's just AI that just produced what Michael Jackson would have looked like from his youth. So please don't ask me how I know, but if he was old. But many people are trying to also try to reverse aging in science. And that's not the topic for my class, but just a way of making an illustration for those who are for it or against it. I mean, that's not the debate here. So the goal in this science is to try to restore youth. So this is Michael Jackson. His hair is dark, but after several years, his hair is gray. So let's look at what it could have been. So what they're doing is trying to see if we can reverse that now. So what becomes after actually becomes before, and then we can now um, reverse the aging. So reverse old Michael Jackson to young Michael Jackson. So in the picture you see here, the preserve command works, and that's the best and ideal thing. You take a snapshot of what Michael Jackson was when he was young, before he becomes old. And when he is old, you have that stored somewhere. And when he's old and you want to restore him back to youth, you now restore. So preserve happens just before irreversible activity, an activity that changes data set and you cannot change it, like what happened for collapse and what happened for contract. The data set changed completely. You couldn't find the former thing that was there. So that's how it works. So you preserve just before you start something that will damage data. That's when you use preserve. Preserve starts first, and then you now do the irreversible activity, and then you are able to restore it back to what it was before that. So that's basically the principle. Now let's try and understand it with the practical. So I have my 20 shapes again. Now there are two tasks that I was given. Helen wants me to send her all the shapes except the cycles. All shapes except cycles. I don't want cycles. So basically that means she wants all the squares. That's basically what she wants. And James wants you to send him all the yellow shapes. So let's assume we give Helen what she wants. So we're able to give Helen all the squares since she wants everything apart from the circles. So we send her all the squares. So the second request for James is that he wants all the yellow. Now the challenge with that is that we have already given Helen all the squares and James needs some of those yellow squares. So how do we solve this problem? And we're going to do it in the practical session. But just to give you a visual of the challenge of preserve and restore. So let's put all the shapes together. Let's rehash what we said at the task. Helen wants all shapes except circles. Basically, Helen wants all squares. James wants all yellow shapes. So anything that is yellow is what James wants. So what I do first to give to Helen is to preserve. Before I alter anything, I preserve. So I put this in the memory of Stata. Stata, this is your reference point, this is your reference data. Immediately I do that, I drop the circles. When I drop the circles, I'm able to give Helen, because it's everything except circles. So drop if circles, we've talked about the drop command. So every other thing apart from drop that is left at the squares. So we send all that to Helen. When we are done with that, we now restore. So we have damaged data set. We first preserved, then we restored, and we're now happy to send it to Helen in between the preserve and the restore. Now to deal with James, we preserve again. We send James all the yellows that he wanted, and then we restore. Basic sequence. So preserve, do the irreversible activity, restore, then preserve again, do the irreversible activity, because preserve says, I'm saving this in my brain. Restore says, bring what was in your brain back. So basically, that's how it works. So preserve creates a snapshot of the data in the memory, and restore restores that snapshot back. So I'm sure preserve, restore. And this is the syntax basically. You see, it doesn't have any variable like the other commands. Very, very special set of commands. So preserve, restore, and in between, you put all your commands. That's what we talk about when we talk about the task, the irreversible activities, and you are good. So I'll give examples which you had used before. So collapse mean temperature January, temperature July by division. So it will alter the data set. Then you collapse mean again by region. And you may want to save in each case, save a copy here, save a copy there, and you're able to reference. So we'll go into the main class where we will talk about this in detail. And I'm sure it will be very clear right now, especially when we use collapse and contract. We're going to be able to use it. So anytime the data set is altered, of course, for keep and drop, when you drop and keep, if the data set had probably 15 observations, because you dropped some things, it may end up being 10. Data set has changed. So sometimes you want to work with the whole data set and give everybody what is theirs. So that's very important that you understand how these things work. Okay, we will be seeing next at the practical session for this lesson. Thank you. So hi there, welcome to this lesson where we're going to be addressing the preserve and restore. Now it's a big challenge, and this is where we stopped in the previous lesson, where we had mentioned race, married, and union. So in lesson 4, this was a summary, and the problem was that these two commands are so powerful. Just like keep and drop, they change the number of observations and the number of variables. So let's look at this. This is an example right in front of you. When we started with this data set, let's look at it. We had 17 variables, 2,246 observations. By the time we finish running the do file, especially the collapsed portion of it, this line 8, we now have 4 variables and 18 observations. Like it collapsed it into a shorter form of a data set. And it's interesting how that happens. So the good side of it is that you can visually look at your data in a summary form. The problem is you want to see what was there before. So that's a challenge. So what I want to do, and it's now adding several layers, so just pay attention. We're going to do it nice and slow. We have learned about how to export with Excel. In the previous lesson, because we did not have this knowledge of preserve and restore, we could not use collapse and contract in the same in the same do file, because the data had changed. it had changed, so it was difficult to do that. And even if you did it currently, it will give you a very, very wrong answer. So we can try it. I mean, there's nothing harm in trying it when we see. So I'm just going to differentiate the variables here. That makes it easy. I want to contract by college graduation. So there's call grad. I'm going to put it here. And by race. So that's what I want to do. Now at line 8, at the running of line 8, after line 8 has been run, the data has changed. Note that collapses the data. Contract contracts the data. So let's run and let's see what we have. Let's run and see what we have. So it runs and stops at 8. It cannot continue to 10. Let's see why. So it says college grad not found. Why? In the collapse data on line 8, college grad has been taken off. So it cannot give us the results. So what we do is we put a preserve before the irreversible change. And then we put a restore here. And when we do that, we are able to now, so let's run and see the difference now. So when we do that, it runs everything smoothly without error. Now it can find college grad and it can run the final line, which is race and college grad. So this preserve happens before an irreversible action. You cannot just reverse it. But if you have a snapshot of what it was before it collapsed, it will restore it in line 9. So the other challenge is that now that it's even in this form, you still cannot use it for other things. So the ideal thing is just to have, another preserve before you contract. So because I want to now tab, so let's do everything so you understand what I'm saying. Let's say I want to tabulate after this, married and race. And when I run it, it gives me this, but let's see how it ran in the main window. It said variable married cannot be found because in the contracting, it only limited itself to race and college grad. So let's take it all over again. Let's take it all over again. We have collapse, we have contract, and we have what's the word? Tabulation. So the first command is in 6 for finding summaries. The first line opens the data set. Clear? Then it collapses. But now because we have a preserve and restore, just imagine this line was repeated just after 8. So it has restored everything that was here before. But the reason why we cannot find married is because when you contract like it has done here, look at this contract here. It has removed the variable married. So you want to preserve and restore in line 9, preserve again, because now you're going to do another irreversible action, and then you're going to restore again. And now let's run. Let's look at how the results come out here. So it was able to tabulate. It found race because it had been restored. It's like nothing ever happened to the data, even though we had gone through two major changes, irreversible changes in line 6 and in line 10. It's like nothing ever happened to data, and all it just did was just to preserve, and when it was needed, it restored. It's like freezing your eggs. I think that's what it's called in biology now, or in reproduction, until when you need them. So you freeze the system, do what you want to do, then go back for your eggs, and you now try and implant them into your system or things like that. That's exactly, I don't know, that's the best analogy to use. So that's how it works. It keeps it in its head. So what I want to do is just add a few layers of complexity. Nothing to worry about. We now, the challenge with this is that we cannot see the output for this, and we cannot see the output for this. Because they all happened. You have no doubt that they did. But because what you see is just the restored version, not the collapsed version or the contracted version, then we have a challenge seeing what happened in between. So what I want to do is just straightforward. I want to do a cd command to be able to determine the the folder where I want it to be. And since we're in module 5, I think module 5 will be the best thing to do. So I go to my C drive, go to my Stata Sage, and then I just add a new module, which is module 5. Sorry, module 5. That's the folder I will be using. And this is the address. So another way of doing that, I told you, is just right click and then you copy the path, especially if you are using Windows. Okay, we now go back to Stata now. So in our Stata file, we'll copy that path, we'll paste the path we just copied. This is it. See Stata state module 5. Always make sure the folder is there, otherwise you find errors too. It's looking for a folder that does not exist, there will be errors. So I want to now just a simple export Excel. Export Excel. We have done this in module 3. So please, if you are not knowledgeable about this, please go back to module 3 and spend some time. Or at best, just start the course from the beginning. But you can jump to module 3 if you think you have an understanding. So I would export using, I will call it module 5. Yeah, just call it module 5. And then I will put this XLX sheet. I will call it for collapse. This was my collapse example. Collapse underscore example. So it will save module 5 XLL file in this folder. I can copy this line. Okay, sorry, I need to do things like sheet replace. Please go and check the comprehensive video of this. First row, comma, variables. Good. So copy and then paste. So I'm only going to change this to contract example, so I don't need to type everything all over again. So there will be a file called module 5. There will be a sheet here for collapse. There will be, and this helps us to see what happened behind the scenes. So we can run now, and you would see that it ran. Oops. Without, there's an error here. I hope I'm right. Yeah, is that an error? Yeah, it says collapse count by ID. It said variable not found for collapse. Oh, I'm so sorry. So I copied the collapse command. Can you see it here in 13? All I needed to do was just to use contract. So that's the error. So I'm happy I make these errors because sometimes it greatly helps us to know that errors are normal, especially when you're starting on your journey. Quite normal. All I wanted to copy was actually line 8, which was just the export, but I copied the other command, and that's why it could not find the variable again. So they should have, if you rewind a bit and you go back a step that I did, that part I deleted. All that happened was that, let's just go back. Everything needs to be explained, so there's nothing, no hanky-panky here. So you can see that there are two irreversible commands happening at the same time without a preserve and a restore. So what happened in this case was that line 12 went straight and smooth, but line 13 could not go because it was looking for it was looking for variables here: married, race, and union, that could not be found. So basically, we clear this out of the way. That's all I did. So we only have one reversible, and then we export. Export does not damage the data set. Permit me to use the word, or alter the data set. So it's okay. So basically, that's how it looks like. Yeah, that's it basically. So now that we have taken the error out of the way, let's run again. Everything should be fine. Beautiful. So it ran all this. It exported the file. It restored. It contracted. Exported the results of that contraction. They're all there. And we're going to just check it in the Excel file right now. So in module 5, let's open it. You can see the file here. And let's open the file and see the tabs that were opened. So these are the tabs that were opened. Let's close this. Yes, data. So collapse example, which we just saw some few minutes ago, was exported. Contract example, which is much shorter, is exported. So these things happened in those lines that we just checked. That was lines 7 and 12. The results were now put in 8 and 13 respectively. So basically, this is how it works. I hope you have been able to gain something very significant today. The goal is you preserve before a irreversible action. That's an action that you cannot alter, and then you restore after, especially before the point again. So there is also another preserve and a restore. That's the combination. Now there are deeper waters. I'll be lying to you if I said this is everything. But like I said, let's take the fundamentals, understand them, and then when we go deeper, we can optimize this knowledge of this. So what's interesting about the preserve and restore command, like we have observed now, they don't really address a variable. They're just supposed to freeze something and unfreeze it. Basically, that's what they do. And I hope you have learned a thing or two. So please write in the comments what you've learned, how you think it can greatly help you. Please explore, 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 explore. So I'm expecting people to, you know, explore other categorical variables, because that's what's the power of tabulation. Explore all those options and let's see what you can get. So I'll see you in the next video where we'll be doing the by sort prefix, just to learn a few more things before we call it wraps on completeness module. Thank you for your time and see you in the next video.